Hello, everyone. My name is Hajat Dalawal, and I'm part of the Windows commercial team at Microsoft. Welcome to Tackling Tech. I'm on location at Microsoft headquarters in Redmond, Washington. I'm so excited to have my first guest on the show, and it's none other than my awesome friend and colleague, Aria Carley. We are going to tackle all things Windows updates together. Welcome, Aria.
Hey, Hardy. It's great to be here. Excited to be on the show.
That's good. That's good. So let's start by letting everyone know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I am a PM at Microsoft, which means a product manager focused primarily on Windows updates and other updates on Windows devices and how you, as an IT admin, can manage them.
Wonderful. And other updates you said. I picked up on that. So
You got to
let's,
expand scope sometime, Harji.
yeah, exactly. It's got to go somewhere. So you and I have just recently attended and participated at MVP Summit 2023 on campus in Redmond. And we had let's start with that, right? So we had a session together. Um, it was called Providing Clarity for Windows Updates or something along those lines. And we had a full house, a lot of great conversations and stuff like that. Let's can you talk to us about that? Like what we got out of it, what did we share, and what we got from everyone.
Yeah, I love the MVP summits. I'm so happy that this is the first one in person after years
Yeah.
of not having them. For like me as an engineer, getting to come and be like, "Hey, here's the things. Here's what we have," and honestly, we know it's not working. Tell us how to make it better. And
Yes.
there's so many opinions and thoughts and people who genuinely care about enterprise management or EDU management or all of these different things to hear their thoughtful responses or their examples of, oh, this doesn't make sense to me because of this is so useful. And to be frank, most of that session was, hey, here's what we have, and we know it doesn't necessarily make sense. Tell us what would make sense.
Right. Yeah, there was a lot of feedback that we received from the community, right? And they're like, "Oh, this doesn't work for us, or we don't like this, or we want this," and I know you jotted things down and stuff like that. So, well, let's go through maybe like what is the top five things that stood out for you?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaways that I have, and I actually would say that this was reinforced by the MVP summit, but it kind of has been happening from all of the conversations we've had online, whether that's on Twitter or with one of our customer connection program folks or the MVPs, is there's probably five main areas that we need to do better in.
Okay.
One is just the clarity of the story. Like we have so many different platform pieces, whether that's Windows Update for Business, deployment service, Windows Update for Business client policies, auto patch, not to mention our management tools like Azure Arc, Azure Update Management, Intune, ConfigMan, etc. And that's confusing. And customers really want to know where do we go and what capabilities do we need to use
Yeah.
to do what we want to do. And so I think that was something that was just reinforced in the summit of, oh my gosh, which licenses do I need? Which products do I need? I don't know. You're confusing me with what I can do where. I think the second thing that it really reinforced is it is not just about Windows updates. Like, that's
Right.
great. Feature updates, quality updates, they're amazing. Don't get me wrong. I love them. But it's about the other updates on Windows as well. Not just first party ones like .NET, Office Store, etc., but also what are we doing for updates beyond that that run on the Windows ecosystem. And then I think the third thing that it reinforced that's really important is reducing disruption, especially in certain spaces. There's a lot that can be interfered with if you restart at the wrong time.
Yeah.
I know the dream of rebootless is everybody's and it's out there. But even without rebootless, of how do we better orchestrate that so we're rebooting less during the month? How do we better download at the right time or install at the right time to reduce bandwidth consumption or to ensure we're not actually causing CPU spikes that are degrading the performance of the device when you're doing things like recording a video call? And I think that that is true across the ecosystem. And so those were, I guess, three of the 5 main takeaways from the session for me. What did you get out of it?
I think similar stuff too. It really like they're really passionate about updates, patching. At the end of the day, it's patching, right? And they just want simplified ways. Like again, when you explain it's about the story. Why are we doing it this way? Where do you go? Like you got Azure Arc for certain things. You got right. You got a homegrown. Some organizations just want to use WSUS standalone, but they don't have the granular controls and stuff with that.
Yeah.
Then you have, patching through Config Manager, patching through Intune, patching through. It gets complicated. So one of the things that I think I hear quite a bit from the community is like, well, sometimes you tell me WoofB, Windows Update for Business, or you're saying WoofB DS, Deployment Services. Like, isn't it the same? Like, why are you telling me, are you using WoofB DS or are you, right? So can you like clear that out for people?
Yeah, for sure. I would say the biggest thing there is really we have a Windows platform. And as part of that Windows platform, there's a bunch of different capabilities. You have some that are surfaced via configuration service provider or CSPs, which mobile device management tools or MDMs, we really love our acronyms, are built on top of. You then also have group policies, which are other client policies. At the end of the day, both CSPs and group policies are setting reg keys on the device, which are being read by the different tools or things, or in this case, update stack orchestrators and policy meter to make decisions about what to do. And those are what we consider client policies.
Right.
You also have another set of capabilities, which we expose via the Graph API. And now what's interesting about those is the Graph API, instead of just being SKU-based, like the client policies where any premium SKU can use it, is license-based. So you need either a Microsoft 365 Business Premium license or an E3 Plus license, A3 Plus license. And so it's slightly different than the SKU-based delineation of client policies. And so when we talk about WoofB versus WoofB DS, which we recognize it is the same, like, let's be clear that both part of the Windows Update platform, but some are client capabilities that require SKU-based differentiation, and some, or WoofB DS, is the Graph API-based ones that are license-based.
That makes
and so that's why we have a delineation.
Right. That makes more sense. And also with WoofB DS, you got a lot more controls, right? You have the multiple rings, when you can patch, when you want to patch, how many you want to patch, and things like that, right?
I would say that some of those controls are in both. The way I would think about it is the client policies are really designed to control client behavior. So regardless of what you're using to manage offering, whether you're using WSUS, Windows Update for Business Client Policies, or Windows Update for Business Deployment Service, those client policies manage your experience.
Yes.
So they manage scan, download, install, restart, notifications, settings page, all of that. Additionally, we have some client policies that can manage which updates are offered to you when. But this is really table stakes, right? Because at the end of the day, that's setting a reg key, which is getting sent up as an attribute to the publishing service, which then decides, oh yeah, I want to offer this based on those attributes. And that's great. You can do that in different groups. You can set up deferral rings. You can do target version. But that's pretty limited.
Yeah.
What we do with the Graph API is it's not setting reg keys on the device. In fact, the device today isn't even aware that it exists. It's really going from your management tool, whether that's Intune or Workspace ONE or using the PowerShell script we provide for the Graph API, and talking directly to the service and our publishing service and saying, hey, offer the devices these things.
Exactly.
And so it's getting much different granular controls. So when we talk about granular update offering, that's where really the deployment service and the Graph APIs come in really useful.
Okay.
But you want to use that in conjunction with the client policies for experience. Otherwise, you won't have a complete story.
You won't have a complete story, yeah. So how does AI play with updates and what we are offering? And where do you think that's going to go in the future? I know we're not going to share our roadmaps and stuff like that, but vision wise.
Yeah. I think that it is definitely going to be huge. And I think we get that question a lot ever since AI has been very popular for a long time. It just goes in kind of a sine wave. But with ChatGPT coming out, a lot of people realized the current potential. It became very popular in public opinion. And so one of the things that I think is really interesting about that is if you look at the way our update stack actually works, if you were to deep dive into what we call our decision engine and broker, which determines when to do what, when to show what, we today use a lot of different heuristics and we build them based off a lot of different data. But there is this whole potential of, oh, in Windows, we have some of the biggest data sets in the world. How can
Right.
we use that information to determine in a more machine learning model kind of fashion when the right times are to do those updates, to do download, to do install, to do restart, not just for Windows, but for all of the updates on Windows? How can we use that
Right.
kind of knowledge? And that's on the back end, right? Like that's on the how can we use this to make your performance experience better. There's also the ones of how can we build funny models? Like I keep joking around with some folks of, oh, we have hackathon coming up. You know what I'm going to build for a hackathon? I'm like, like a chat bot for logs. Like that's all you clearly need for a hackathon is how are we going to be able to ask a chatbot like, hey, tell me why X, Y, and Z happened with my updates based on this set of logs?
True. Yeah.
Because I'm like, that would be super easy to do. And so like these are just some examples of those are silly examples, but these are some of the things we're looking at. How do we build into the product things that give you better recommendations, actionable insights, and steps that you can take
Hmm.
that are based on large sets of data and customized to you rather than maybe just having defaults.
Yeah.
Although, to be honest, I think having solid defaults would be a good first step.
And what about energy consumption? Because we are also focused pretty heavily in that space as well.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I don't know if you saw, but with Windows 11, we announced this thing that's internally called EcoQuas. I actually don't know the external name. That's unfortunate for me and for anyone watching this video. But we're really excited because Windows will actually look at whether or not it's a good time to do certain update activities, which typically would drain your power and things like that,
Yeah.
whether or not it's a good time for the power grid to be consuming that much power. And so
Yes.
it actually does things that try to ensure that the amount of carbon emissions are lower. And so
Yes.
seeing those numbers is great. And we're now actually trying to bring that to other of our products to lower their update emissions as well. Or sorry, carbon emissions based on updates as well. And so I'm super excited because if you're looking at those numbers, it's the first time where I, as someone who tries to do things that are better for the environment,
Yes.
is like, yes, what I'm doing in Windows
Yes.
Update actually matters from an environmental point of view. And it's not just hurting the
Right.
environment, but it's positive
Yeah, I'm really
contributions.
excited, happy about that as well. And I know in some countries, and probably in the U.S. as well, certain electric companies they have different rates at different. So sometimes, like during the winter time, right, your night is cheaper, or things like that. Because you're using heat at home and whatever.
Yep.
So this will all come into play, and realize when is the best time to do things for your Windows 11 systems. But what about uh, drivers and firmware and third-party applications? Is that something we want to touch upon?
I think there have been some really cool blogs that are recently released on both of those topics that I would highly recommend you reading.
All right, we'll point to those blocks. Enough said. One of the things I hear from the IT pro community, right? So we're trying to say, hey, let's do modern solutions like Intune, managing your devices, users, and all this stuff. Like it's great stuff. It's amazing. But some of them are saying, yeah, I still need to do config manager, which is a great solution, whatever. But one of the things that they stay with a product like config manager for their on-premises is to manage servers, patching servers. So they moved their devices, like client devices, over to Intune and stuff like that. Fantastic. What's the story there? How can we help them from their on-prem server management for updates to modern solutions?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this is something we think about a lot. And I would say if you're using servers and you want to move modern, I would look into Azure Arc, which, by the way, just uses Azure Update Management as part of it to actually do the update management. And that's actually calling the Windows Update APIs on the back end to go to the cloud for your updates. Note, you can also manage some of your servers with group policy for their quality updates using Windows Update for Business. And some devices we do see doing this. Not many, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, like, it's not the number one thing I would even recommend, but like, you can do it. In terms of servers being manageable in Intune, they're not. In terms of different types of servers, they also have different needs. Like your HCI servers, you can actually manage their feature updates as well as their quality updates from the cloud with Windows Update for Business. For other server types, it's going to be different. So I would say that's a complex question, and we don't have a solution that would work for both clients and servers that is cloud connected today.
Right.
That said, the combination of Azure Arc and Intune does work. Your reporting will be slightly different. I do think that you would be able to add your servers to some of your other reporting. Like if you created one out of Log Analytics, you'd be able to have both in a single report. Now, what is interesting is whether or not we need their configuration tool for servers and clients to be the same. And this is something we were talking to the MVPs about as well, because in some organizations, the folks who are managing the servers are actually a different team than the folks who are managing your client devices.
That's right.
And so do those management tools even need to be the same? Or do they even need to be in a single report? Or what is that line of should they be managed? And I think that's something we're still figuring out and figuring out where to invest in.
Yeah, no, that's great. I like exactly what you said, and provides some good insight into that. The good point, that one of the good things I picked up here is that yes, a lot of organizations have their separation of roles. Those that manage servers, those that manage clients, and sometimes they don't come together and stuff. So do we need the same thing? Do we not? It's half a dozen here, half a dozen there. So finally, lots of confusion. I know, sometimes I get lost in the weeds of updates as well. Can you, I'm very visual, and so do a lot of people. And you've done an amazing, I don't know what the terminology is. You did that at Ignite a couple of years ago. So could you map out all the update mechanisms, how they play with each other, how they're interconnected or not, so we can have better clarity?
Yeah, I mean, I can try. Let's not overpromise here, but I can certainly try to do that. I mean, that's why I brought my lovely Microsoft branded iPad to walk you through. Okay, so we're going to start with the basics, even though I think you and most of the people watching already know the basics. We basically have, and I'm going to purely stick to Windows updates here, as well as the other updates that come through the Windows Update endpoint, which, by the way, is the first thing, the WU endpoint. So the Windows Update endpoint is pretty much where we publish all of our Windows feature updates, quality updates, etc. Now, you can scan this endpoint either with a server, which would be your WSUS server. I'm clearly not clear on what a server looks like, so this is my interpretation. And this would be your WSUS server. And so you could easily scan our endpoint with your WSUS server and download content from your approved categories to your WSUS server. Or you could say, no, I want my devices to scan directly against the WU endpoint, in which case you have your devices scan directly against the WU endpoint. Now, in the actual control of these devices, in either case, you could have a management tool. Now, that management tool will depend on where or what kind of management you're doing. So for WSUS, you could be using WSUS Standalone, you could be using Configuration Manager, you could be using any number of third-party on-premises management tools or server management tools. And that management tool is basically saying, hey, here's the approved categories I want, here's the ones you should sync. You're syncing the categories to your WSUS server or your WSUS servers or your chains of WSUS servers. You're then pushing them out to devices. And in that case, you're saying, hey, device, you want this, you want this. And if you're using an on-premise management tool, what really is also on the device is a little client for your management tool, because they install a client. So if you have ConfigMan, you actually have a ConfigMan client on each of your devices. And this ConfigMan client is actually telling the device lots of things, like how and when to update, when to scan, when to install, what notifications to show. Although, if you want to do the preview of the ability to use the native Windows Update client instead of the ConfigMan client when doing updates, you can opt into that preview using the Configuration Manager technical previews. Now, if you look at the other side, you also have a management tool. And now that management tool could be Intune, it could be a third-party MDM, it could be just Group Policy and Group Policy Management Console. It could be Azure Arc, it could be literally any myriad of tools that is using cloud management. And now you'll notice here, there's not actually necessarily a management client on the device. There can be. I actually think Intune does have one, but it doesn't have to be there. Instead, this management is communicating to the device in two ways, either with CSPs or group policies, which are getting written as little registry keys on the device, or by setting things in the Graph API and having them communicated directly to the server. And both of these are communicating different things about what updates you should get and the behavior that the device should have whenever it gets those updates. Now, when we talk about WFB and WFBDS, like we were saying earlier, the Graph API is, of course, going to be WFBDS. Now, the CSPs and group policies are going to be what we would refer to as WFB when you're in the Windows Update Policy node. And now you might ask, okay, so if that's WFBDS, that's WFB, and this is Intune, how does AutoPatch play in? And that would be a great question. AutoPatch is actually going to be like a little robot that is on top of Intune that's saying, hey, Intune, I want you to set these things. And so AutoPatch sits right here, and it will automatically configure your WFB and WFBDS policies on your behalf, as well as some of those for other application types and update types to say what should actually be being set on the client to ensure you get the best update experience. And so one big difference you'll notice between management on the left-hand side, which is on-prem, and the management you're having on the other side, which is the cloud, is that on the right-hand side, there's going to be a lot more automation and intelligence that's put into it. We have things like automatic safeguards. We have the ability for AutoPatch to automatically put devices and set their policies for you to have the best experience and pause those updates if things are noted to go badly. We have the ability to actually do intelligent rollout on your behalf with the Windows Update for Business Deployment service. And we're constantly adding more intelligence all the time and things to simplify your update experience while doing it in an intelligent, recommended way. And so that would be a quick 5-minute summary of the difference between on-prem and cloud management.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Arya, it's been great having you on the show. I can't wait to bring you back to deep dive into one particular thing of Windows updates. Thank you for watching Tackling Tech. I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something new. Coming up in our future episodes, we're going to tackle IT Pro perspectives on Windows 11 from MVP Summit 2023, as well as a continuation or second part of our interview with our customer Cronus. Please like, subscribe to this channel to stay up to date with the latest episodes. And if you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, please let us know in the comments below. You can also follow me on Twitter for more updates and behind-the-scenes looks at Tackling Tech. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time.